Hi folks, it's Dane. So the rebinding, refretting neck video appears that I've lost the very first segment of video where I explained what exactly was wrong with the binding and what I had done to try to repair it, and that I was not happy with. So I'll go into that briefly here. So the binding had, because I like to wrap my necks at a radius all the way to the top of the fretboard, and then I roll the top edge over. Gives you a very, very great feel. But I hadn't done a bound neck in quite a while, and so what I wasn't thinking about was that sharper radius, that nicer radius going around the neck actually wore too thin on this bottom edge in places. So I cut it out and I tried to just fill it with the binding goop that you make with acetone. And I did that, and for some reason the color didn't match. And so, well, the next thing I tried was to actually cut a section of it out and replace it with the actual binding. But apparently I didn't have any more binding with its exact color. It was just slightly off. So that just wasn't going to fly. So I ordered some new binding, and I peeled all the old binding. You'll see that. I did have that video where I peeled the binding off, and from that point on, it's up to speed in the video. But I just didn't explain why I had to do this in the first place. After fighting with it for a couple different tries at trying to fix it, I just say, you know what, it's just not worth it. I'll just pull the frets, get the binding off of it, and just deepen the channel and go from there. So what follows is the rest of that stuff. All right. I hope you enjoy. Take care. All right, so I'm going to bring in for one or two more of these using water and the soldering iron. And I just run the water here, and it just wicks underneath the edge of the fret. Wicks in better where there hasn't been super glue wicked in. But that and the soldering iron. There's still a little bit of a tough pull out of there, and I think it's just because of the glue. I haven't had to refret any of my other guitars that I've built, so I've only ever had to deal with factory frets for the most part, and pulling those out isn't usually much of a challenge. And these little, small narrow jaws on the fret puller, I got these from Stu on sale. These are actually better suited for less chipping because if you just creep along there, they really just pull the fret up far enough for you to get to the next little bite. And the slower you pull the fret out, the less likely it is to chip your fretboard. I might be crossing a line here to even utter the hallowed name of Ted Woodford in a second-rate guitar YouTube video, because Ted's are truly first-rate, and he is a wealth of information and knowledge, so I am by no means putting him down. I hold him in high regard. But he always does a little score line next to his frets with a scalpel or X-Acto knife, and I don't find that necessary as a rule. If I were having some chipping issues at this point, I would do that. And let me take a second to explain why I hesitate to do that, just as a rule, on every refret. And just afraid that if I get too much, if I score that and I do chip a lot of wood out, then the fret doesn't have a place to sit. Maybe I should be more specific when I don't have my hands moving. Here, let me get this done. There we go. Okay, these are coming out really clean. Okay, so what I was trying to explain, and I don't think I have a scalpel here handy, but let me just say that if you run down this is warm. If you run down the edge of your fret with a scalpel blade and just score the top of the fretboard, and then you do that on both sides. And then if you do have a chipping problem, as you pull the fret out, it seems like you could end up with actually a lower fretboard to replace the fret into, right? Because you haven't changed your height out here, but in theory that if you cut this out and it chips all the way across, then your new fret is going to seat lower than your corresponding frets if they didn't chip out. Does that make sense? So that's just why I don't go there unless I'm really having an issue. But at the same time, even on the necks that I've had some problem with and had some pretty big chips in, I've saved those chips along the way, and I just super glue them back in, and it hasn't been an issue for me in that regard. Like I said, I highly regard Ted, and we all have different ways of doing things. So I'm no way trying to bash Ted or say that his way isn't a good way. We all have our ways that work for us, and this is working for me right now. Okay, we're still friends. Somebody else I was watching, I watch regularly, and I don't watch anybody regularly that I don't have pretty high regard for. But somebody else that I watch regularly was doing the same. It might have been Bohannon. I'm not positive. And there again, I could be stoned for saying those names out loud on my little low rent channel. All right, I'm going to bring you back in after I have the frets off. Okay, I got all the frets out of this guy. I'm straddling the tripod for the camera to get this good of a shot, this close. And I just thought, I'm going to try this dry, and I just whittled the razor blade into this little edge here. And I had a syringe at the ready. It's going to break over the dot. So it just broke over the dot at the fret marker dot. It popped loose. Seems, yeah, it's a little more stucked right there. It's just going to continue to break around the dots. That is a thing that I forgot to consider when I was considering what a pain this was going to be. Forgot about having to re-drill the dots. I can't even see this side with the camera in my way. I do have a visor on, magnivisor, so that I don't damage. There we go. Probably didn't see that happen because I'm sure my hand was in the way. But now this is going to be a whole nother story on this side because I've got that strip that I super glued in there. And I know that's not going to want to come out. I'm crawling around to the other side of the tripod if you hear me groaning. Yeah, so I've already got this other little piece here that's glued in, so pretty sure that roll it back, try to get that part of it out of there. I wanted you to see a little bit of this process. And so I don't know if I can keep up with myself here. One hand on the camera and one hand on the binding. What a talent. Okay, so that's almost the whole edge there came off pretty nicely. But we still got this this stuff that is not going to want to come out of there because, like I said, I super glued it in. So I might have to take some acetone to that. Or pop this razor blade in there and see what I can do. Yeah, push it right at my other hand. It's always something that's a good plan. Work out well. Yeah, I might have to soak that in acetone, laying it down horizontally to get that to soften up. Okay, so we're to the point on this neck that we need to recreate a rabbet for the binding to go into. And I got to get deep enough here, along here, for that edge not to go thin again when I shape it over. Now, this is the shape of the neck here, so I haven't measured that, but I have a scrap piece of binding that I've been using, and I've been checking against this edge here, and it's pretty good where it's at. I'm feeling pretty calm. I might go just a little bit more, but let me show you. I did a lot of this, or most of it, with a chisel, and it gets a little uneven. You're not sure. You get to a point on the edge of the fretboard here where you create a little square, right? And so the binding isn't, and I'm not going to move the neck to show you this, but there's a gap between the binding and the face of the fretboard. All right, so if you rock it, you can rock it right up to the flat on the fretboard, and it'll roll down. Now, I doubt very seriously that that binding is going to bend when I put glue on it. It would have to get extremely soft to do that. So what I've done, this is kind of a two-stage thing here. I made a little block that just hooks the edge of the fretboard right here, and this rides in that groove for the binding. Now, I put a piece of sandpaper on it that does not go all the way to the edge of the fretboard. So if you put this on, that stop that you saw just rides right on the face of the fretboard. Okay? You might have to take my word for it, but there you go. And so if I had put a piece of sandpaper on there that went all the way to the edge of the fretboard, it would actually be changing my dimension on the width of the neck, which I don't want to do until the very end. So what I've been doing is sanding with this block, and it's avoiding this edge. You can see I had chalk on the whole neck, on the whole edge of the fretboard, and we only have that little sliver of chalk left where you see the gap, okay, on that, in between the stop block and the edge. There's a gap there, and that's the 80 grit. So I've been sanding with this, which is definitely straightening out the little lumps and bumps on the, on the edge of the fretboard that I created with the chisel. But now I'm going to, once I've decided I'm far enough in for that I'm happy with the coverage I have on the binding here, and it's not going to get thin looking again, then what I'll do is I'm going to put a little finer piece. I'm going to put a 100 grit piece in here, and I'm going to just make it wide enough that it goes all the way out to the edge of the fretboard. So what I'll be doing in essence is filing until that, or sanding rather, until this piece of this edge of chalk goes away right here. And I'll refresh that. But that way I'll be able to watch it and see right when that piece disappears. Then I'll know that my binding is going to sit flush against the fretboard, and you won't see any gap on the inside edge of it. So that's what I'm doing. I just wanted to show you this little trick here. See, I'm so into laminations that I even laminate my little blocks that I create things with. That wouldn't have been a cutoff from my neck or anything, so I had to make that special. I'll tell you, this neck has turned into quite the time soak, but I got the old binding off, and I got the new binding in. Ordered a little bit thicker binding, and then also I don't know if I mentioned this in a previous video, so I'll mention it. I actually cut this in on a little bit of an angle so that I had less, or more actually, behind the offset, so that as I took this off, I didn't end up with the same problem I had before. So it turned out pretty clean, I think. And I mentioned before that I had to do the dots over, and they all came out just fantastic. So twice in a row. And then the bottom side, which was the side that I had the problem with. So, all right. Oh, and then I had the back I showed, I had the epoxy or resin all over the wingay, and I had taped it off, but it puddled in places and was quite a chore to remove. You might notice, I don't really see any now. A little darker here in the heel. You know, you can kind of see it, you know, darker than the rest of the little spot right here at the peg head. That does, in fact, just disappear when you put finish on it. I wet it down with naphtha to check that, and everything looks great. So there you go. I'm going to go on to fretting now. Once I get the fretting done, then we can go ahead with the finishing on this neck. So I only sanded it up to 220. At this point, I'll take it up to 320. Oh, all right, folks. This is the finish up on the neck binding fiasco. So everything's bound, fretted. The epoxy fill has been leveled out, and all the places that it wasn't supposed to be got cleaned up as well. Okay, all new frets. Okay, binding. Now this was the edge that was the problem from the beginning, and it's all nice and clean and looks good, no thin spots. And then the top edge with the dots. The other thing, where is that at? I just wanted to point this out. Okay, it's not on this edge. Did it go away? You know what? I think I sanded it away. Yeah, I had one little area where some of the binding had melted into the pores in the mahogany from the glue, and they are gone now. And I just did the final, well, the 320 sand now, so I must have taken it out. Anyway, it looks like we're all set. So now I'm back to where I started. Hey, thank you for watching. Take care of yourselves. Bye.